I guess I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan.
When others says I'm afraid, I stop seeing him as an animated character and see a real man with a real soul, even though it's all fiction. I'm afraid. That's like seeing your dad cry. The person you always perceived as strong and unbreakable is showing emotion, and it hurts so bad.
I had a son. He passed away. I had a girl who loved me. I threw that away. My mama died when I was a kid. And my daddy, well, I watched him die.
Now, modern games have come a long way since the early days of Pong and Space Invaders. With advanced graphics, complex narratives, and immersive gameplay, gamers today can transport themselves to completely different worlds.
Somebody!
Nowadays, modern games have reached a level of realism that was unthinkable just a few decades ago. Graphics and sounds are so immersive that players often feel like they are really there in the game's world. However, while this level of detail can add to the overall experience, it can also make certain aspects of the game harder to handle. Now, for example, some games allow players to make decisions that can have profound consequences on the game's story or outcomes. These decisions can be difficult to make because of the way a game is set up or how the story unfolds before your eyes. But what happens when games get too realistic and when each of the choices you are presented with pose a different outcome? It's easy to get lost in the world and forget that it's just a game. Firewatch is what I like to call an emotional masterpiece. Firewatch takes storytelling to a new and deeper level. What appears to be a simple tale of two young lovers turns into a wild adventure where Henry Yu uncovers mysteries that lead to a much darker and disheartening truth. The way this game builds a suspenseful and thrilling atmosphere using music and changes in the world around you all the way to the end is incredible. There are no jump scares, but it doesn't need them to keep you on the edge. Pair this with a beautiful story with two wonderfully voiced characters, and you have recipe for maximum empathy. I'm sorry about the wonderful part. Yeah, that was very interesting. Okay, moving on. I felt Henry's regret, his fear, his relief. Every choice I as the player made also felt morally weighted. It was easy to relate with Henry as I chose his every response to Delilah throughout the entire experience. We feel what Henry feels, and I guess you get attached to Delilah, especially because your own wife does not even recognize you anymore. You and Delilah are having fun. You comfort each other and flirt, depending on your choices though. According to my playthrough, I never got to flirt with her until I played it twice. And that's when I realized that, which was very cool.
Yeah, it's really going.
I'm gonna call it in. They'll send in a hotshot crew for some suppression, but I bet we'll be stuck with her for the rest of the summer. And she doesn't have a name yet. I usually think of something funny or something practical or a little risque when coming up with them. But why don't you do the honors? So, no ideas, huh?
Delilah's a nice name.
No, you big dummy.
I was kidding.
But he opens up to you, you open up to her, and you're both in a horrible situation where you are both scared. If something causes attachment issues, it's living through stressful situations together. In the end, you are finally going to meet Delilah, but she's gone. You feel sad and or betrayed. Couldn't she wait like 1 minute? It feels like an immense loss, and you get thrown back to the reality. I guess the controversial part was Delilah saying no to Henry, regardless of what decision you make. But I mean, that's just real life, isn't it? You can nudge others into making decisions, but you don't make decisions for others. Because this is a video game, somehow by taking away our urgency, our expectations are subverted. When we really expect to be in control of everything at all times, this makes Delilah feel like a real person. Regardless of what we say or do, she sticks to her morals and doesn't just do whatever we want her to do. And I love Firewatch for that. Your choices in the end don't matter, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. Henry runs away to the woods to escape his problems and try and gain some control in his life. For me, the game is very much about the struggle for and the illusion of urgency. His wife's illness, the fire, the tragedy, it's right there. It's right there and I can't say it. But Henry runs away to the woods to escape his problems and try gain some control in his life. For me, the game is very much about the struggle for and the illusion of urgency. His wife's illness, the fire, the tragedy of Ned and Brian, and the decisions of others all emphasize how little control we often have in how our life turn out, even as we struggle for that control. It's not the first game to take the illusion of urgency that video games often present and use that to make a point. BioShock and Spec Ops The Line famously play with the idea. However, those games seem to me to be saying more about the nature of playing a game. Firewatch takes that and says, yeah, it's not just games that make you feel like you have more control than you do. That's just how life is a lot of the time. No matter how you will, the incurable illness, the raging forest fire, the decisions of others can and will affect you, and there's nothing you can do to stop that. You can rage against it, but in the end, only acceptance will heal your pain. Which is why I love Firewatch. It's, as I said before, takes storytelling to a whole new level I've never seen in a game. But there's also another game I want to talk about before I end.
Squadron, take it!
Captain Walker, we're all that's left of the damn 33rd. We surrender, sir. Dubai is yours.
Where is Conrad?
Where he's always been. Upstairs, waiting for you.
Let's move on to Spec Ops The Line. The game takes place in Dubai, where a catastrophic sandstorm has caused the city to crumble. As Captain Martin Walker, you and your team are tasked with finding and rescuing Colonel John Conrad, the leader of the Delta Squad. Along the way, you discover shocking truths about the actions of the American military and their methods of war. Like, that's surprising. The game forces the player to make difficult decisions that question the morality of their actions. Do you choose to save innocent civilians, or do you prioritize the safety of your team? Should you use brutal force to eliminate enemies, or should you try to peacefully resolve conflicts? At the end of the game, after finding Conrad and discovering the truth behind his actions, it is revealed that he has actually been dead the whole time. He had committed suicide and had become a figment of Walker's imagination, a manifestation of his guilt and PTSD. This raises some questions about the reliability of the narrative and the player's own experience throughout the game. Now, throughout Spec Ops line, everything is a fantasy, but it's not Walker's. Before you say anything, let me explain. I think that Walker and Conrad are both split personalities of the character we're playing with. I think a Marine got so scared from what happened in Dubai that he developed two personalities, and over time, the Walker one took over passively. This is why it is said on the screen, do you even remember why are you fighting? Do you even remember why are you fighting? Inside the protagonists, there is this battle of personalities. Whatever events happened, they happened a long time ago, and the protagonist is in a catatonic state. Catatonic state. Catatonia is a disorder that disrupts a person's awareness of the world around them. And I just wrote the moment because my pronunciation sucks, but bear with me, English is not my first language.
You better fucking pray he makes it. Let me take him, Walker. Sir, permission to open fire. I need you to give the word. Walker, give me the fucking word.
Now, moving on. I like to believe that this is why there are multiple endings. First one, protagonist shoots himself. Split personality Conrad takes over. Or protagonist shoots Conrad equals to split personalities, Walker remains in charge. If at the end he shoot Falcon team or die at their hands, it means both Conrad and Walker fuse somehow into a single personality. If you drop your weapon, you wake up to reality and the two personality splits are gone. What I think is that this unknown Marine was under Conrad's charge, that being us the player. The battle of factions happened. This Marine stood for Conrad, but they killed lots of civilians. This traumatized the Marine. Now this Marine was in team with two other people. 1 week later, Captain Martin Walker is sent with two men named Pluto and Adams. They try to man the conflict, but Conrad uses white phosphorus and kills the entire Dubai. Martin and his men die in the crash. The Marine is the only one walking. His mind cannot bear the events, and in his catatonic state, he believes himself to be Walker, while at the same time, Walker personality develops a personality of Conrad, someone to blame, and everything inside this poor Marine's head gets mixed up. I say this because in the note, Conrad says, sorry if when you will hear bad things about your father, it is most likely the fact that Conrad used white phosphorus to burn down everyone and everything. This is why we see a drawing with people being burned. When Walker used white phosphorus, that was most likely the Marine's brains getting memories intertwined with Conrad's deeds. I don't know if you noticed, but both Conrad and Walker blame each other, and in reality, alter egos do have the power to alter the memories of the original personality. I also noticed that we find lots of notes describing the most recent events. I think that this Marine is in a semi-catatonic state, discovered Conrad and Walker's belongings, or the journals, which led him to cope with the trauma by creating two different personalities. But that's just my own opinion, personal opinion on the game, personal take on the game. The final choice in the game presents the player with a moral dilemma. You can either choose to commit suicide and end Walker's suffering, or you can choose to kill the remaining survivors of the city and continue the cycle of violence. This was a bold move by the developers, as it forces the player to reflect on their own actions and the implications of their choices. There are many ways to interpret the ending, and that's what makes it so fascinating. Some argue that the ending is a commentary of the futility of war and the devastating effects it has on soldiers. Others argue that it is a commentary on player urgency and the consequences of our choices in video games. One thing is for certain, the ending has sparked countless discussions and debates amongst the gaming community. It's a testament to the power of storytelling in games and the impact it can have on players. To sum it up, games have reached a level of realism never seen before, which can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can enhance the gaming experience and make games more rewarding. On the other hand, it can also make decisions and losses feel more impactful, creating stress and frustration for some players. But the key is to recognize that games are still just games, and to maintain a healthy perspective when playing them.
Yeah, it is. That's why Gould stormed this place. He didn't want the gate. He was trying to rescue his people.
This is your fault, goddammit! Stop right there, Lugo. What it is, you wouldn't listen to my choice! He turned us into fucking killers! That's enough, Sergeant! No! No!
We need to keep moving.
What?
Reinforcements will be here any second. We need to keep moving.
But Walker, you're not even...
I'm gonna make these bastards pay for what they've done. Now, are you with me or not?